Hello, I'm Andrew G. Marshall and welcome to this edition of Facebook Live. So my topic today is, can you fall back in love? And what I'm going to be doing is taking your comments, and I'd also like to know where you are and also getting those kinds of information as well. So the question is, can you fall back in love? Let me start straight away and tell you the answer is yes. You can fall back in love. And I've got 4 particular ways to do it. So if you're watching, there's 2 ways you can interact, and I'd love to hear from you. The first one is you can just give me comments, tell me where you are, and join in that way. Another way is to actually post questions so that as the talk goes along, I'll be answering these particular questions. So let's cut straight to the chase. Who am I? Well, I'm a marital therapist. I've got 30 years helping people fall back in love. And I've actually written a book that's been translated into 20 languages on this subject. It's called I Love You, But I'm Not in Love With You. And more recently, I brought out another book called Can We Start Again? And it's subtitled 20 Questions to Fall Back in Love. So, if you've got a question for me, please do give it to me. And if you've got comments, tell me where you're from. It's great to hear from you on that as well. So, let's go straight to the question. Can you fall back in love? Well, the answer is yes. If you're in this situation, it could be for a variety of different reasons that your partner or you yourself have fallen out of love. The first one is that you've lost sight of each other. If it's this situation, it's not so serious. So let's start with that, and then we'll come on to the more serious one when people say, I love you, but I'm not in love with you, and I'm about to leave you. So, how do you fall back in love if, everything's okay in your relationship, but you're just both a little bit sort of bored and uninterested with each other? The daily grind has got you down. Well, the first thing to do is to actually become curious about each other, because taking each other for granted is sort of saying, well, I know what they're going to think about that, and therefore you don't ask the question. You don't actually listen to them either. And that's the second thing I'd like you to do, is I'd like you to really listen to them, not just with one half of your attention on what the children are doing, but 1,001 different ways of showing that you're listening. You can nod your head. You can actually give back something they've just said. So you say, oh, and your boss didn't really understand you. And that actually shows you're truly listening. You can ask questions, and in this way you're actually showing them that you are listening, that you haven't lost sight of them, and that you are curious about them. And this is the first of my really strong tips for you, which is useful for this and is useful for any situation of can you fall back in love. Ask your partner, how can I make your life better today? It's a really powerful question, so I'll answer it. I'll say it again. How can I make your life better today? Now, the likelihood is they might actually say something that you don't particularly want to do. For example, clear out the garage. But do it, because you're actually showing them that you are serious about all of this. Incidentally, thank you very much everybody for all the likes I'm seeing coming through. That's really good. And please, if you've got a question about this subject, can you fall back in love? Please post it, because that is really useful. The likes are really nice as well. Thank you very much to the person who's just given me a like now. But and if you are watching this later, rather than in live, if you put a comment in, I will be looking at the comments, and those will be really useful to have. So going back to that point, how can I make your life better? You have to deliver on it. So the first things might actually be really hard work that you're not actually keen on, but actually what you're doing is you're showing that you're really serious about falling back in love. So I've just had my first question. Before I go on, let's have a look at it. Thank you very much to Kimberly. Should you just start following these tips without mentioning you're trying something new, or should you talk about it first? What a brilliant question, Kimberly. I think it depends how serious the situation is. If you've just lost sight of each other, then I don't think there's any need. You can actually just begin to pay more attention to them, to be curious, to listen, to do the repeating back that I've just talked about, and looking at them, being in the same room as you're talking to them, and asking that question, how can I make your life better today? Now, if you're into the second category, which is, I don't love you very much anymore, or I've had enough of you, I think that it's important to tell them that you're going to be doing something different, that you've actually heard the fact that they're not in love or they don't care anymore, and that you're going to do something about it. And here are some of the solid, concrete things you're going to do. So I think it depends how serious it is. And if it's you that's fallen out of love, rather than expecting your partner to do these things differently, start putting them in place yourself. So thank you very much for your question. If you've got questions, please do let me know and they'll flash up on my screen. You can also comment in other ways by leaving a message. You can give me likes. Those are all important because it helps me know that I'm talking about the right subject. So we've got 4 particular tips for how to fall back in love. And the first one is when you've lost sight of each other, become curious and then ask that question, how can I make your life better today? You'll find that actually after a while, quite a few of your things will not only go down well, but actually will get your partner to start thinking, well, are there things that I could do for you to make things better? I must say also hello to Georgina. Thank you very much for the thumbs up. Now, we're talking about Can You Fall Back in Love? My name's Andrew G. Marshall. We're on Facebook Live. We're taking your questions, and thank you very much. We've got Melissa has started a question, how would you? And when we have the rest of it, I'll answer that one for you, Melissa. So let's move on to the more serious situation where somebody's actually fallen out of love and they're perhaps giving you the message, I can't change my feelings. And how do you deal with that? Well, my answer is, I don't want you to change your feelings. I want to hear more about these feelings, about why you've fallen out of love, because I love you and I'm taking this really seriously. And I love you even if you're actually angry with me. So if they can't change their feelings, say, tell me more about these feelings. What are they? Are they resentment? Is it anger? Are you feeling very cold? In what way are you feeling cold? So that you're getting more and more information. So you're actually taking your partner's feelings seriously. And that's really positive, because the moment you're taking your partner's feelings seriously, you're giving them the message that perhaps things could change. And that's really positive. Ask them more questions about why have you fallen out of love with me? Because the more information you have, the better it is, because in that way you can begin to think about what you might want to change. So we've had 2 ways that you can respond if your partner's fallen out of love. The first one is be curious and ask them the question, how can I make your life better? The second one is to say, tell me more about the reasons why you've fallen out of love. Tell me more about those dark and unpleasant feelings. And that's very powerful, because normally when somebody is actually angry with you or doesn't like you, you run in the opposite direction. But because you love your partner, you want to know more and you want to understand about it. If you've got a question, please post it and I'd be very happy to answer it. If you would like to leave me a like or a comment, that would be really good. Thank you very much for Cheryl, who's just let me know that she's listening. Thank you very much for the positive comments. So we've looked at 2 of the ways that you can respond to that somebody's falling out in love with you. And here we come to possibly the most powerful one. And this is the one that's going to surprise you, because what do you do if your partner's fallen out of love? And the answer is, argue more. Now that's going to sound really weird, because actually, how is arguing going to improve things? Well, I'll answer that in a moment, but before I go on, let's look at another question. This is from Melissa. How could you advise talking about your day when you feel the other person may feel envious that you've been at home all day? Well, it's a very good question, Melissa. I think the first thing you do is actually acknowledge the fact that they are feeling envious. Let's have that out on the table. Tell me more about why you're envious. What was it about your day that's made you envious? So I don't think you're trying to take away their feelings. That's the overall message. You're not taking away their feelings. You're listening to them. And when they feel you've really heard them, you can then begin to tell them about your day. I had another question that I didn't answer. This is from Georgina. How do you deal with the anger and the rejection? Well, the anger I'm going to come on to in a moment, and the rejection will follow on from that. So stay tuned, Georgina, and I'll answer that one in a second. Right, Suze. Hang on a second, Suze. I've lost you. These are the hard things to bring up and talk about. How can you protect yourself from some of the answers you might hear? Yep. Well, I think the best way to protect yourself from some of the answers you might hear, and this is also going to sound a bit weird, is it's actually not about you. Now, what do I mean by that? So if somebody says, I'm really angry with you, you immediately think, actually, this is all about me. I've done something terribly wrong. But often, actually, the anger is about this person. Sometimes they can actually be angry with themselves and they're just shoving it all off towards you. And I suppose my second answer, after saying it's not all about you, is to say that it doesn't really matter if they are going to say bad things. Now that's going to also sound weird, but if they've got them off their chest and they're out in the open, you can actually begin to properly deal with them. They're much better out than hidden away. And as I'm going to describe more in a moment when I talk about anger, is that once people have got the anger off their chest, they've got all the negative things off their chest, they will begin to actually find some of the positives. Now this is, once again, I often, when I'm talking with clients about this, I tell them the myth about Pandora's box. Now, I don't know if you know about the myth of Pandora's box. She opened the box and out came all the furies of the world, the hate and the bitterness and the unhappiness. But what people forget is the last thing that came out is hope. And this is what happens. After actually people have been angry and they've actually gone off on one about you, and you don't actually defend yourself, you actually listen to them and you take them seriously, tell me more. What they do is they begin to answer some of those angry things. Well, actually it's not all your fault. There are things that I need to change as well. And that's where the hope comes out. So, if they say nasty things, remember it's actually not just about you. It's actually people who say nasty things are actually feeling pretty nasty themselves. And it could be that some of the anger is actually about their mother, their boss, etc., etc. It's just being thrown at you because you were there at the time. So it's not all about me. And the second one is, tell me more about it. And Suze, thank you very much. I'm glad you found that helpful. Right, Georgina is back. She wants to know, what if your partner doesn't talk about feelings and bottles it up? How do you get them to talk more, please? Brilliant, because that brings me back to the other point I was about to make. We're talking about the ways that you can fall back in love. If you've lost sight of each other, be curious. Think, how can I make your life better today? If it's more serious, you don't change their feelings, you accept them and you ask to hear more about them. What do you do if somebody actually bottles their feelings? And that is argue more, because what happens when you have an argument is their feelings actually come up to the surface. Often they'll then take them back. They'll say, oh, I didn't really mean it. But often what people say in anger is terribly important. So don't discard it, listen to it. And when they're a bit calmer, you said, I don't take you seriously, or I put the children first. Give me some examples about how I put the children first. How could I make you feel that I don't, that you're important? What could I do that would give you that message? So if you argue more, all the issues come up to the surface. So, and the fourth thing you can do is accept their anger, because the reason that people fall out of love is because they don't accept their anger. You do something that they don't like, and it's not actually very loving to be angry. So it gets pushed away and it gets turned into resentment and becomes a building block between the two of you. So if you are both angry, what happens is those feelings come to the surface. Like I said with Pandora's box, once they've flown out, you can't be angry forever. Anger burns itself out, resentment doesn't. After the anger is gone, becomes a peace. You're actually able to talk to each other. Sometimes truly loving feelings can come through. We're going to wrap up in a second, but before we go, I've got one last question from Caroline. She says, what if your partner can't articulate their feelings? That's a tough one, isn't it? Because you need to actually know what words they're feeling. I think that most people can articulate their feelings, but they just need a little bit more time. So one of the questions I ask them is, where are you feeling it in the body? Is it in the chest? Is it a headache? You know, is it actually in your shoulders? Are you really tight? I've had people who say the feelings are down their backbone because they're holding themselves tight. So find out where the feelings are. If they still can't help, I sometimes throw forward a couple of suggestions like, oh, are you feeling angry? See what feelings you're picking up. You know, I'm sensing that you're really quite sad. Sometimes if you throw forward a suggestion, they say, oh no, it's not sad, it's miserable. So those would be my tips for if your partner can't articulate their feelings. Find out where they are, give them more time, there's no great big rush. And thirdly, think about the feelings that you can sense in the room and put forward a suggestion. Actually, you know, is it sadness? And they will 9 times out of 10 correct you because you've actually given them the right sort of ballpark. So this has been my very first ever Facebook Live on the subject of Can You Fall Back in Love? I'd like to thank you all for your comments. They've been really useful, for all the likes. Thank you very much, Joshila, for your thank you. It's been really useful to have this chance to talk to you, and I'm going to be doing this again in the future. So if you're going off in a sec, when I go off, please put some comments down on the video, and in that way you can suggest some ideas for future Facebook Live videos. If you're watching it as a repeat, please do give your comments still, because we'll be looking at those, and please give your suggestions. We're going to be back in a fortnight's time doing another one of these Facebook Lives. And the topic will be suggested by you, so get posting your ideas. So that's it from all of you for today. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm Andrew G. Marshall. Have a look at my book, have a look at my blog, which is www.andrewgmarshall.com, and there'll be more suggestions about how you can fall back in love. If somebody asks you that question, can you fall back in love? Remember, you know the answer, don't you? The answer is yes.